For me, it's also important to have an identity as a woman in the world, as a person in the world who has her own friendships, independent of her family, etc. I had really fallen into the myth of when you find the one, they complete you. They are everything. They can replace a whole village. And if it's the right person, they will fulfill every need. And I never want to put that kind of pressure on my marriage, on my spouse ever again. I made friendships really kind of a pillar in my life, and I take my friendships seriously, and I give them the sort of importance that some people might reserve only for their spouse and their children. But my friends, the close friends, those deep friendships, have that level of importance of almost family for me, because they are.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to the Life in Transition podcast. I am very excited to have with us today Sylvana Rochet, who is an executive and transitions coach, is a mom, a seeker, and a curious soul who's on a mission to grow as a human being and evolve and to help others do the same. And she's also an excellent ratatouille maker and currently lives in France. So Sylvana, most welcome to the Life in Transition podcast.
Thank you, Art. I am so pumped to be here, and I can't wait to see what we get into today.
Yeah, me too. I love the conversations. I absolutely do. So jumping in, Sylvana, what would you consider to be one of the more important, impactful, meaningful transitions that you have been through in your life?
There have been many. I've made a lot of transitions. I like to say I've lived about 9 lives. And the one that feels most recent and most alive for me to share about on today's show is the one that I made a couple of years ago when my family and I, and when I say my family, it's me, my spouse, and our 2 daughters. My family and I decided to move from beautiful Santa Cruz, California to Lyon, France. And one of the things that I'm discovering from that transition is the importance of learning to make friends as an adult when you land in a brand new place.
So that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 summers
And
ago.
how old are your daughters now, your girls?
Now they're 3.5 and 8.5. So the little one, she was 1.5, baby. She was just kind of take me wherever. I'm happy as long as I'm with my parents.
Right.
But our 6-year-old, that was rough. She had only known one place, her birthplace, her whole life. She had, those of you who are parents, you know this, but a 6.5-year-old has a pretty busy social schedule, activities, real friendships, and feels really attached to their life already and their habits and the people that they see regularly. So that was definitely tough for her.
And do you guys or you or your husband have family there in Lyon or not?
My father is French. He lives in the south of France, which is a few hours drive from Lyon. And so the reason we decided to move back at that time was because he's getting older. He's living alone. His spouse died about a decade ago. So he was kind of worsening in his health. And we got this sense that he didn't have many years left. So it was just, let's go now. Right. Let's be with him. Let's have the girls get to know him and have him enjoy them also in his last few years. I think grandparents, whether you have a lot in common with them or not, grandparents can tell you so much about your identity and why your parents are the way they are. And they can tell you so much about where you come from and what your family has been through. And there's something about grandparents telling you stories about whatever things you may have heard from your own parents, but your grandparents' take on that story can be really rich and interesting and fun and just different sometimes even from what you're hearing from your parents. So there was all that I really felt was important for our girls to be able to have with their grandfather.
I know. I read something years ago about kids that know where their grandparents are from, like where their childhood home was. And it's not just that's maybe anecdotal, but it's statistically correlated, maybe not causal, that specific thing. But they are better adjusted. They feel more secure. They're more confident because of the grounding that they have and who they are, just simply from that little thing. So it was interesting. So I went that summer when we were doing a re-Americanization tour of my kids after living overseas for a long time. I went to my father's childhood home that I had never seen myself in Rahway, New Jersey. And it was eye-opening also for me. I mean, he grew up very differently than I grew up. And it was very interesting. And I can't say how much impact it had or didn't have necessarily on my kids, but I know like on my wife's side as well, after we got married, when I got to go see some of their ancestral homes and, you know, even very backwoods places in Tennessee where there were infants that are buried on the farm in little limestone shacks and stuff. But I feel a lot more connected to that family, even as marrying in, having been to some of those events and seeing the physical places and putting markers on the graves and stuff like that. So there is something about that, and hearing from the grandparents. So good for you for being willing to do that. You said something also that's really interesting that I want to dig into a little bit more for myself right now and for all of our listeners. You said you learned already, before I asked you, one of the things you've learned is that it's really important to make adult friends, not just through your kids. Why is that important?
Absolutely. There are many reasons, but for me, it really comes down to, again, we're going to come back to identity. So
Yeah, but most things do.
Having an identity for me, with my family, I have an identity as a mom, as a spouse, as a best friend to my husband, all of these things, right? And for me, it's also important to have an identity as a woman in the world, as a person in the world who has her own friendships, independent of her family, etc., so that I can learn and grow from people with different ways of seeing the world, from people who are not relating to me as a mom or as a spouse, right? That relationship is very different. So I get to experience different facets of myself, and I also get to be nourished in different ways from my friendships. And then I can bring that back to my family or to my other friendships in life. One of the ways that I really got to understand this was I was married once before. I got married young, in my late 20s. And we did not have children, and we separated soon after getting married. We just lasted a couple of years married. And I remembered, as I was getting separated and getting ready for the divorce, which was very amicable, thank goodness, very amicable and peaceful and all of that, I felt a sense of loss and grief, because while I was with this person for 6 years total, in the whole relationship, while I was with this person, I had really fallen into the myth of when you find the one, they complete
everything.
You.
Yeah,
they are everything.
Yeah.
They can replace a whole village.
Yeah.
And if it's the right person, they will fulfill every need, right? So, young marriage, just a lot of lack of life experience and immaturity, and just not really understanding, what do I truly need in this life? And how does a person truly meet all of their needs without depending on that one person? And so going through divorce.
Yeah, that's a recipe for codependence.
Yes.
Which is super unhealthy. And then eventually resentment.
Well, that's where
that's what comes after codependency is resentment, right?
Exactly. And I think that a lot of people do realize that once they've been married for a long time, maybe they don't make it to divorce, and they're able to realize that, and they're able to maybe do something to change things in their relationship. And so I was going through this divorce and realizing, wow, I've really kind of left some of my friendships aside. And it was a time where I more than ever wanted to rediscover all those different parts of myself, right? The musician, the singer, just whatever parts of myself I had not been nourishing. And so I really found myself kind of scrambling to rekindle those friendships that I had not really nourished. And that's when I really got the sense, I said, if I ever get married again, I want to be really aware of this, and I don't want to make the same mistake. And I never want to put that kind of pressure on my marriage, on my spouse ever again.
Yeah.
And so from that time on, then I was around 31, I made friendships really kind of a pillar in my life. And I take my friendships seriously, and I give them the sort of importance that some people might reserve only for their spouse and their children. But my friends, the close friends, those deep friendships, have that level of importance of almost family for me, because they are.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful. And the longevity study from Harvard, I don't know if you're familiar with that. The latest book is called The Good Life. There's several books written about it, but the bottom line of that is relationships. The quality of life is the quality of your relationships, including friendships. I just finished reading Bronnie Ware's The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And one of those is specifically, I regret that I did not keep my friends. I did not keep my friendships important. And if you read that book, you'll see that the individuals, even if they're surrounded by family, they want to also really connect with friends on their deathbed. So that's also legitimizing your point. So that brings me to the question, and this is something that I struggle with myself. How do you make friends as an adult in a new environment where, especially if you're not working in that environment per se, right? You're not going to an office every day where you're meeting people. So how are you making friends in France?
Yeah. I've moved several times in my life, cross-continental moves, never with children. So that's kind of the special bit here. And with each move, or with each, like when I moved from New York to California, which was like moving from one country to another, with each move, I get better at understanding and refining how to quickly make friends and create community around me, right? There's going to be like friends, like you're seeking those deep friendships, and there's ways to do that. And then there's also just building community and being able to go out in your neighborhood and say hi to your neighbors and feel like you belong there and feel like people know you. And when you go to the local gelateria, they know your name and they're happy to, right? There's those two levels, like there's seeking the deeper friendships. And then there's also feeling, wow, like I went out and about, when I'm in my neighborhood, I feel like I have my place here, right? The number one kind of rule I have for myself is be shameless. So I'll give you an example. So obviously there's making friends through the school, but as you know, Art, you're going to meet lots of other parents of children at your school. Some of them may even be friends, right? Our children may be friends, but like there's not a real connection there between the parents. Right. Sometimes there is, and that's
it's wonderful if you can be family friends, right? Yes. If both of you like both spouses or both parents, and the kids like the kids,
it's great. Then, and we have some of those, and that's been really lucky. But when we first moved to Lyon and went to put our kids in this international school, there was a beginning of year picnic for the families. And I decided I would go to talk to some of the parents, et cetera. And I noticed something very interesting, which is that most of the families who attended, so there's about 60 families in our school.
Okay.
Most of the families who attend, and the same thing happened this year, who attend the New Year's picnic are the families who already know each other. It's like 10 families who are all closer together.
That are already meeting. Yeah.
And I'm going, where are the other 50 families? Why don't they want to be here and meet other parents and be part of this community? So that was the first thing that struck me. And then having conversations with other parents and stuff like that over the last couple of years, I've learned that a lot of new families won't go, or maybe the mom will go, but not the dad. And they'll say, oh, I don't know anybody, so I'm not going to go.
Right.
But that's very interesting, because my thinking is, oh, I don't know anybody at the school.
So I got to go.
Like, how else am I going to meet people? So I go to this picnic. My spouse couldn't make it that day, but I went with the kids. And, this is France. So people aren't super open. I'm the American. I'm just kind of trying to see who's kind of looking friendly, who's smiling at me, but it was definitely not waiting for you with open arms. Hi, you're the new family, come talk to us. It was like, we all know each other and we're going to look at you from over here kind of thing. And one person came and talked to me. And it was a dad who also is a very international dad. He's French. His spouse is French. His wife is French. But they've lived kind of all over the world. So they recognized another sort of international expat type person. So
Right.
he came and talked to me, and I thought he was super cool. This is Kev. Now Kev is our friend. And then I met his wife, and I thought she was super cool too. And I was just shameless. I said to both of them, we should totally get lunch with my husband, the four of us. Let us know when you're free. You seem cool. Like, I have no shame saying to somebody, you seem rad. Let's do coffee, right? So that's the first rule for me, is be shameless.
Yeah.
And
so when you say be shameless, I would tone it down in a way to invite. If you like somebody, invite, right?
Yes.
The number one
Don't
key
be
for
embarrassed
friendship.
to say, I think you seem cool, and I would like to see if there's friendship potential there, right? You don't say it in those words, but it's really...
It's a little bit asking somebody on a date, except it's platonic.
Except it's for friends.
But the process is the same, and you have to get the courage and the gumption up to be shameless, to invite and accept that maybe they'll say yes and maybe they'll say no. But if they say no, then you ask somebody else.
And maybe they won't be interested. And that has happened to me too. They don't have time, or they're just generally not interested. But that does not deter me, because it's by you putting yourself out there and making those invitations and saying to people, hey, I am open to friendship if you are. Right? Because I think also people have these like maybe preconceived ideas about, they just moved here. They're probably busy.
They got two little kids.
Yeah, they got two children. Like, it's too much. So you also have to think about the biases and preconceived ideas that the other person has. So you being open, being willing to go and say to someone, just like dating, I think you seem super cool and we should get coffee, is the way to go. And let me tell you, you cannot go wrong with that tactic, because people will say yes, right?
Yes.
The other thing is looking for opportunities. And creating opportunities to connect with people. When I first moved to our neighborhood in Lyon, it's a neighborhood called Confluence. It's really beautiful. It's like the tip of this peninsula where the two rivers of the Saône and the Rhône meet, and it's got this like feminine and masculine energy, because each of these rivers has a different energy. So it's this really cool neighborhood, Confluence. And I would just, if I went to the bakery, I would say to the baker, hey, so, is there good ice cream around this neighborhood? Like, just creating opportunities to have conversations with people. I saw there was a community center for families in my neighborhood, and they had like an open play time Thursday from 4 to 7. So I went there with the kids, and they were playing with the games, and I go and talk to the director lady. And I said to her, we just moved here from California. It's, the four of us, we have young children. Are there WhatsApp groups? Are there events? Tell me what I need to know. I'm brand new. I know nothing. Just tell me everything you know about somebody who wants to get plugged into the community. She brings me to a wall, shows me a bunch of flyers with QR codes for different groups, different events, different things. And she says, join this WhatsApp group. It's where all the neighborhoods are, conversing all the time about what's happening. So stuff like that also I find is very helpful. Like, when you're new to a place, wherever you're going, try to start conversations with people by asking them curious questions about things that they're probably going to know about, right? Like, what's your favorite ice cream place? That's an easy one, or what do I need to be plugged into? Or, I see you have young children, what activities are they in? Or what do you all do on weekends? So that's the other thing.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Midlife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes, you've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do, but you still feel like something's missing, like you're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. Midlife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition. And we will learn and execute living life with no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community. When you first said Shameless, I thought maybe you were going to talk about like asking for help for things, which seems like nobody wants to do anymore. And I wonder if you have experience with that or not. Because we have so much. We have Uber, we have Amazon, we have, we don't ask for rides to the airport anymore. We don't ask for, in this neighborhood that I just moved out of, I lived there for 11 years raising my kids. And it was only this year, the first time I asked to borrow a staple from my, it was actually an onion from my neighbor, like to borrow something food, right? From my neighbor.
Cup of sugar.
And it was, because we don't do that because we're embarrassed and we'll just run to the store. It's only 15 minutes or whatever. And it was such a sweet experience. I was pushed for time because I had an evening meeting and I was fixing dinner, and this one had to start with an onion, and we didn't have any onions and nothing else was thawed. And I didn't have time to run to the store and back. Otherwise I would have just run to the store, right? But I didn't have time to have it done before this meeting. So I went across the street and said, "Hey, Pam, really sorry to bother you, but do you have an onion? I'll bring it back to you." And she was so delighted that I asked. She was so delighted, and she's like, "Anytime, I always have a full pantry, I end up throwing stuff away. My kids are gone, please, ask anytime, come over anytime." And it was interesting how I felt so connected in that moment in the neighborhood. And I've been there 10 years and never asked for help because we just don't do that. We don't want to be a burden on people, but those are the points where you build friendships when you ask, when you're shameless, right? "Hey, can you give me a ride to the airport? Or can you help me move my couch?" Or whatever the case is. "My tree fell down. Can you come help me?" These are things, that's what neighbors are for, but we are afraid to ask because we don't want to put people out. And maybe we don't want to be put out, but we don't realize that taking someone to the airport is not being put out. It's getting a chance to connect with them for 40 minutes in the car. Right. And so to see it differently, once we have the frame that relationships are important, we can see those types of things differently, which is really, it's really worthwhile. So that's what I thought you were going to say when you said shameless, but I would encourage people to be shameless in that way as well, to ask for help, ask for, and be willing to give it as well. Right.
Yes.
I think that's one thing that our society, especially in America, in China was different. When I lived in China, it was different. It was so much easier to make friends and ask for things and connect. Even with Americans or Westerners over there. But here it's, and maybe technology has evolved and stuff too. I lived in China 12 years ago. But anyway, that's another, hint for making friends is to be shameless in that way as well and be prepared to help out when somebody else asks also. And it's also a lot of fun. Some of the best times in my neighborhood is like when everybody got together and cut all the trees when they were blocking, we had a huge tornado come through and everything's blocking the streets. And then you go and cut the trees together and everybody comes out and helps. And that's the way we're meant to live, but we don't today because we don't want to bother people and we're all so busy and so forth. So, another little thought on that, though I still have a lot to learn and a lot to grow, especially on making family friends or couple friends. I sort of have my friends, my wife has her friends, the kids have their friends, but we don't have so many our friends, which would also be really nice. So
that can take a little bit longer because you've got 4 people that have to really connect well. So that's,
Yeah. And we have some of those and some have moved away and that's life. And then that's why I asked about making friends, because the truth is, this sounds really bad, but the truth is we don't actually need any particular person in a friendship, as tough as that is to say. But we do need people in friendships. And some will
tell me what you mean by that.
So you might say, well, I had 2 good friends and they both moved away. And I was really close with them. And so I don't have any friends anymore. Right. But the fact is,
you can't make new friends. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you actually don't need that particular person. Even take your example. Sorry if I do this, but you had a husband and you got divorced and you don't need him. You don't need that particular husband. Right. If you want a husband, you go find another one. And it's the same way with friends. I don't mean to say it bad, but it's the same way with friends. Right.
Yeah.
You do need to have relationships.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to necessarily be that person. Of course, there is a certain depth and sweetness to old friends, right? You cannot make new old friends. But if you lose old friends, to make new ones anyway is a lot better than not having them. I wonder.
And not all
Sorry, go
your
ahead.
old friends are meant to be lifelong friends.
That's right, too.
There are old friends who, if you have moved away and you're living different lives,
Yeah.
that friendship, there will be a sweetness to it, and you'll always have that appreciation and that love for each other. But there's probably very little there in common if you were to move back to that town or what have you and found each other again. You probably wouldn't have much of a connection
you may connect
anymore.
or you may not, and that's okay. Yeah.
Because we're always evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely. I love in a men's group that I'm in, we talk about this relationship is a man who walks the same road with you for a time. Right? So for this time, then you two walk the road together. And then if one of you wants to change, then you change, but you still fill that space, but with somebody else that walks that road and knows your story for a time. Right. Yeah. So that's good stuff. And it's something I've been thinking about a lot because I've been reflecting on this recently, and this I feel even a little bit embarrassed about, but especially after living in this area longer than I've lived anywhere in my life, I feel like there are the family holidays and there are what I call the friends holidays, which this is not black and white, but this is the way it shows up in my life. Right. So, Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas, these are family holidays and my house is always full with family. Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, these are friends' holidays, or you go to the lake with your friends or you go to the beach with your friends or whatever. And these are the ones where I don't have a house full of people or not at somebody else's house full of people. And so it shows the difference. Yes, I've made family really important. I haven't made friends as important because the friends' holidays, it's usually just me and one of the kids or my wife and one of the kids or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the reason that as we're coming through that season right now that I was curious about that when you brought that up. What else did you learn in this big transition that you did moving to France? So you learned, you obviously knew about relationships and the importance of grandparents and kids, and you've learned about friendships. What else, if you look back over that 2 years, what is another big takeaway that you've had or meaningful learning that you've had?
Just making a note to myself here.
Sure.
So before I go to answer your question about meaningful learning in this transition, making a note about that. One more thing about making friends.
Sure. Yeah, please.
We've done this, my husband and I have done this every time we move, or some version of this. Throw yourself a housewarming party when you move to your new place. Yes. We print flyers. We do it the old-fashioned way. We put them on people's doors, whether it's a building or we've done it, when we lived in California, on our street, on people's individual homes. We put a flyer. We say, hi, we are such and such with our baby, blah, blah, blah. Our children, blah, blah, blah. We live at this house. We're your new neighbors. This Saturday, come by 4 to 7. We'd love to meet you all and be part of the community. You'd be surprised how much people are dying for a community and how many people actually show up. And you want to talk about feeling like you are part of a community right away. It's almost like a hack. I don't know why not everybody does this. Yeah. But it's almost like a hack to fast track to building a connection with all of the neighbors.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great.
They will come and ask you questions and you will know their names and they will know your names. And then the next day, it's a completely different reality that you're living in every time you see these people who now have a personal connection to you. Absolutely. So that's a really good one.
Thank you for that. And that is great. Yeah, thank you. That's a good idea. I think about that even. We just moved for the first time in 11 years and time to do that. We did it in our last house. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
So meaningful learning since this move. There's been so many. One of the things I have learned is just because there is grief when you make a big change in life, a big transition, whether it's a move or you separate from someone, just because there's grief and sorrow doesn't mean that you made the wrong move. When I moved to France, even though I was moving, I had lived in France before. I grew up in France as a child. But it wasn't my home anymore. I had been living in the US and I had lived in Colombia, just outside of France for so long, most of my life. It wasn't going home. So it was a strange new land. I had never lived in Lyon specifically. I'd lived in other places. And I missed California Terribly.
Sure.
Terribly. In California is where both of my babies were born, where we had very strong, close friendships with other
Yes.
families.
Yes.
Also because we were older, so we had learned to create deeper connections with the people in our lives, right? And I grieved. I
Sure.
would be, filling out paperwork for my kids' health insurance in France or something, and I would start bawling out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it was just like my heart was aching.
Yeah.
We were, Lyon is a big city. It's bustling. It's international. It's, there's stuff going on all the time. I was kind of also in shock from having left a beach town to a very big city. So that grief and that sorrow is normal. And I had at least the life experience and the maturity this time to understand I'm feeling grief and sorrow and sadness for having left this place. And it doesn't mean that I made the wrong choice. And it doesn't mean that I should turn around and go back because I'm feeling this sadness.
Yeah.
It just means I had something that was really sweet and important in my life, and these people mattered to me, and that place was beautiful. So I just got to understand that this grief and sorrow just means I'm feeling some things about having left something that was a great situation.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that I made the wrong choice, and it doesn't mean that this new reality isn't going to become great and feel good eventually.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, sadness is grieving something that we've lost, is recognizing the loss of something and the closing of a chapter. But that doesn't mean it's wrong at all. I love this. I wrote a blog on this, and then I was talking with Ellen Langor on a Chip Connolly fireside chat, and she was talking about this too, and I've read some of her stuff about it, that you make decisions and then you make them the right decision.
Yes.
Right? There is no wrong decision. There is no right decision. You make a decision. That's all you can do. And then you make it the right one by how you engage with it. And missing and grieving the last chapter, it doesn't mean that that's the wrong decision. Absolutely right. I had a lot of grief about leaving this house that we raised our kids in.
Of course.
But it doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. And it's normal to grieve it. And I had lots of grief. And the last time I was there, I'm going to go there again tomorrow because it's just where it's under contract right now. And we're still doing stuff to it. The last time I was there, it was without any intention, it was a palpable shift because I allowed myself to feel the grief. The last time I was there, the grief was replaced with gratitude for having had that opportunity.
Yes.
Right. And it doesn't mean you should skip the grief. I think you have to go through the grief to get to the point of the gratitude. But it was really beautiful to just feel like, wow, we've had so many great memories here. This is great. I've had such a blessed life to have that experience, and didn't at that point feel the grief. I probably will again, and that's okay too. So
yes,
that's a great point. I wonder if you and your transition that we're talking about is relatively fresh, relatively recent, but it's still a couple of years ago. Is there anything that you would go back and tell your 2-year younger Sylvana? Is there anything you would want her to know and that you've learned that you would want to pass back to her as she heads into this transition of moving to France?
Yes. And that is, so one of the things I've struggled with is the culture, the French mindset. And even though it's a mindset that I'm familiar with, French, I have French heritage, etc. It was really hard for me in the beginning, and I spent a lot of time and energy actively resisting.
Yeah.
How do I put this? How difficult, by American standards, how difficult French people can be.
Yeah, and the culture as a whole, shops are closed and blah, blah, no customer service and blah, 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 blah.
It's not customer oriented. It is not, human design oriented. And that caused me a lot of grief, like not the good, grateful kind of grief.
Because you're resisting what is there.
And just now, 2 years in, I'm finally starting to relax into accepting that this is just how they are. You know how they say, like,
Yeah.
accept the things you cannot change.
I know, and I
Like,
pray that
I
prayer
know
every
that,
day.
but try to remember. So I'm just finally starting to relax into accepting this is how people are here. And it doesn't make it right or wrong. And it doesn't make, what I know better. It just means this is who we're dealing with. And this is how life is here. And I'm finally starting to get to that place of true acceptance, of just saying, you know what, this is beautiful too.
Yeah.
And there is
And what
something
if,
for me to learn here.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. Something to learn anytime we come up against resistance. And what have you found that's also beautiful about the French people or the French, like the stuff that you're resisting, you don't get to experience the good side of it either. If you can't accept the quote unquote bad side. So what have you seen? And I mean, I moved to Germany, and so I have some, being an American and moving overseas, I have some appreciation for this. I worked in France while I was living in Germany. But what's the upsides that you've seen? What have you, once you quit resisting and you start accepting, what is the beauty that it's brought into your life as well that you were blocking before because you were resisting?
One of the things I find truly admirable about French people is they are willing to fight and speak up and say no and put their foot down and go out in the streets for even things that we as Americans might consider small or unimportant, or why are they striking about that? But I think it's baked into their culture, right? They went through not too long ago, right? Reminder, it was in 1789 that the Bastille was stormed, and that, a few years after that, monarchy was brought down. So the French people have a long history of having been ruled by people who were unfair, who took advantage of the masses, right? The monarchy was not a nice system.
No.
Right? It was built on the hard work of 99% of the people, and just basically almost a predatory system.
Yes.
So once you can understand and appreciate that and go, wow, these people got out from under that system and they rebelled and they literally cut off the heads of these people to say no more. Then I can appreciate and understand, okay, today when they see one little thing that is not fair, one little thing that is just going too far in their opinion, they are very quick to say, no, we won't have that.
Right.
Because we remember, even though it's not the
Right.
same people, but it's recent enough.
Yeah.
Europe is the old continent. They've had a long history of a lot of things happening. So, so that I really appreciate the fact that I think we can, especially in the American culture, where we're sometimes afraid to speak up or say that we don't agree, right? I really admire and appreciate that about the French now.
Yeah. This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you are looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life. If you're facing, challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. You can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle Coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets. No, I think that's beautiful. And I remember one of the things that I hated about moving to Germany is that shops close. And when they said they close at 4, they don't
3:30,
lock the door at 4. The register is cashed out at 4, right? And I'm thinking, what the, until I also got to see, it's nice to have a Sunday off. to not be able to go shopping. It's wonderful to not have that distraction. It's wonderful that there are values besides making money that are important.
Yes.
Right. Which in the US, that's pretty much it. It's business, and then optimize the business and optimize the use of capital and run 24/7 and
optimize everything.
So it was really nice to realize that there is optimizing capital use, and return on capital is not optimizing life. And Europe recognizes that, or at least did when I was there. And as much as I hated it some in the beginning, once I accepted what was, I also realized there's a lot of great stuff about it. In the village that I lived in, small Southern Catholic village, Southern German Catholic village, you're not allowed to make noise on Sundays.
Right.
So no drilling, no lawnmowers, right? And again, at first I thought that's ridiculous. But in my super fancy neighborhood that I lived in for a long time here in Brentwood, Tennessee, I would have loved to have been able to sit on my back deck at 7:00 on a Sunday morning and have a cup of tea without lawnmowers and airplanes and leaf blowers. And, it would be really nice. Right. So there's a flip side to all of that stuff that we don't like. If we can accept it, that's also really useful.
Yeah, that's the other thing. No place is perfect. Everything has trade-offs.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. How has this, and we've talked about this some on your friendships, but how has this transition also affected other important relationships in your life? You've talked about a little bit of the challenges with your daughter, with your dad maybe, or other, like the choice to make this move. How has that in principle affected your other relationships?
I mean, it's definitely hard to find the ways to connect with our friends from California, right? Because of the time difference, because of how far and expensive it is to see each other, etc. So that is hard.
Yes.
The other thing that's hard, but this has always been hard, this is more of a point for people who are like my husband and I, who don't live near either one of their families of origin. This is a constant conversation with us too. We're like, we need to go join a commune or something, because we find it very hard to, and even though we're really good, we have it down to a science of like how to create community, how to make friends, etc. It's a bit harder for men, but that's a parenthesis. But one of the things that's tough is when you're far away from your families of origin and you're raising your young children, seeing their cousins is like a once a year thing, right? Which we work really hard at. They have cousins in Spain. They have cousins in Oregon. My daughters, they have cousins also in New York State. Yeah. So it's like a lot of work to coordinate. Where do we meet and how do we meet and how do we get everybody connected? So that is tough. But the other thing is, what do you do when you know that you are probably never going to live in a place where your families of origin are? Just because it doesn't work for your life, it doesn't work for your career. It's not something you would want for your family that you've created with your spouse. And that has brought us to some interesting conversations about, well, where geographically would we want to live where we could create that sort of thing? Like, is that a country? Is that a culture? Is that, actually a thing that you can do anywhere, but you literally create a commune with other international families who want to live in this way and be each other's family. Yeah. But it is a real thing, especially when you have children, and also when you don't, because I do have friends who don't have children and probably won't. And they're also thinking about this. Sure. Do we join a commune? Can we get in on your commune that you're working on? Right. But it's that question of how do you recreate to the best of your ability? How do you recreate what it is to be part of an extended family? Right. That you don't have nearby. Yeah. And how do you choose those people, and how do you choose that place, and what are the factors that matter to you? And so this is bringing us to some really interesting reflections, because we're realizing, it's not necessarily a nationality that we're looking for. It's not necessarily like a type of person. It's more like people with shared values. Yeah. Right. people who are good vibes, people who want to live in
Right.
community, right? Because
Right.
there are people who don't want to live in
Yeah.
community. Again, there's people who just like to keep to themselves, and they have their family of origin nearby and their high
Right.
school friends,
Right.
and they have everything they need.
Right.
So that's another thing that we're sitting with lately is how do we create that for ourselves, and where is that, and what are the factors that go into creating that?
One of the things that I saw with that when I lived in Shanghai was that it was very easy to meet people. And I felt like I had that maybe more than anywhere else, actually. But then after 2 or 3 or 4 years, everybody started to move away because we're all
they were
expats.
also
We all have
expats.
contracts, right? So that sort of undid, like when we arrived and we had that feeling and we had, like there weren't other family obligations for everybody. So we had people at our house all the time. People would pop in. They wouldn't even call, which was great.
Oh, yeah.
Some guy, hey, you
Like
got time for
days.
tea? You got time for a beer? Yeah. It was great. Or we'd go, Friday nights, we had this, 3 or 4 couples. We'd always go for foot massages and wine, on Friday nights,
That's great.
It's fantastic. Right. But then also those folks start to move away. Right. So what also made them available also made them later unavailable because we were all there together. We were all open because we were expats and we're moving in and we don't have family. And then most of us went to the wind, including myself eventually. Right after 3 years, I moved back to the States as well. So it is a great question. And I think it's something that we all, I'll challenge a little bit what you said. I think everybody wants to live in community. Some people don't acknowledge it and they don't know how. So they've given up on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe.
But I think I'm not ready to give up on it. I was at Chip Connolly's Modern Elder Academy in Baja, Mexico earlier this month with my wife. And so much fun. And you know what the most fun we had there was baking bread with everybody else and then presenting it for lunch that day, and having 3 meals together on the same table with the same people for 7 or 6 days, on the beach doesn't hurt either, but it's really living in that community where I think about one of the real highlights of my life was when I led my 5 siblings, 1 brave sister-in-law, and 5 nieces and nephews on a 6-day, totally unsupported in the wild wilderness of Montana backpacking trip.
Wow.
So 12 of us, ages 7 to 53 at the time, was amazing to live and play and not be workaholic and not feel like we all had to achieve, and there's no cell phones and there's no one's any more important than anybody else. We're just walking and observing beautiful nature and playing games and cooking and eating and sleeping and making beds and together, and it was amazing. It was amazing. And even with all the struggles, you can imagine with a 7-year-old on a journey like that.
Wowzer.
Right.
Yeah.
But was so beautiful, like that everybody just pitch in. And even with the 7-year-old, I love my little brother. He's so good with these younger kids. He had kids later, which partly I think makes him a better father in a way than the rest of us because he's more wise and more mature before he had kids. But to see him sit there with his 7-year-old and say, hey, we're going to make the camp sometime today. And if you don't want to walk right now, it's okay. I'll sit with you. And so 2 or 3 of us would stay and sit with him, and then the rest would go on. And to know that he's loved and he's part of the group and that he's got to walk to camp. But then, maybe 5 minutes later, maybe 2.5 hours later, he'd be like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. And to see that and to see the whole community around him like that. And it's really fun. And then sharing wisdom every day. We'd do a little trail whiz at the end of the day. And it was so funny. And you have to guess who said the different things, and some were funny and some were deep and some were both. But what a beautiful way to live in community without all the distractions. We're so distracted today. And I think that, that's something that I've still strived for. And I think it's the healthiest way to live when we can be in community like that.
What a gift for your family.
Yeah, no, that was so much fun, and it happened organically. I was in Scouts and I was such a workaholic. I was a Scout leader, but I never would take the time to learn something like that on my own. But my son wanted to go and do this Boy Scout backpacking trip for 12 days. So because of that, I learned how to do it, took the wilderness first aid. And, I was fit and I loved outdoors, but I never knew about like how to plan and prepare for something like that. It's a lot.
And
like
lead a group and keep them alive.
And keep them alive. A bunch of 13 to 17-year-old boys, right? But I did. And then after having done that, then I was like, I'm ready to do. And then my brother was living in Germany and I was over there with him skiing in February 23. This was 23. And he said, I want to take my kids. I feel like I missed a connection with them. And I want to take them when we're back home in Montana this summer. On this backpacking trip. And I said, great, let's plan it together. So we sat there with maps and everything of the wilderness and drew our own route and our own maps and like stuff that wasn't even in all trails and, looked at topography and, and then it was just gonna be the four of us. But then one brother found out about it, another brother found out about it. And then the sister found out about it, the other sister. And they're like, we want to come. And then we ended up with this whole crew, which was amazing. And of course, if I was the workaholic that I had been before, like we didn't do the route that I planned because not everyone was capable to do that. And not everybody followed the preparation instructions as far as equipment and stuff, but I had a backup route because I knew that might be the case. Right. So we cut off a fair amount and it didn't take anything off of the trip. We went one day shorter and about 20 miles shorter or something on the route, but it was fine, and we agreed that even though we were coming back to town a day earlier, no cell phones. Even the super high power corporate executives in the family, which there are a few, and business owners. And so it was really great. It was really great to just live and be together with people that you love. And I remember like even the silly little thing like this, I'm at the grocery store and my sister-in-law calls, oh, I need to get this and this. And I said, oh, I'm already picking up guac. She goes, no, you don't pick up guac. You make guac.
Hello.
Like, yes. And everybody just bringing their talents. We'd have these meals, super simple place that my brother lives. We'd have these meals without any planning that were fantastic. Somebody do what they're good at. Somebody else do what they're good at, and then voila, you have this amazing meal and sitting outside and taking turns and whatever, with 12 of us in this one house. But anyway, so living in community, I think is really important. And it's something that we all are hungry for. And I love what you said to be shameless about reaching out and asking and connecting with people. And the worst that can happen is it stays the same. And the best that can happen is you can make a wonderful community, make wonderful friends. Is there some, I'm thinking about, and I'm going to open this up a little bit wider, but if someone's going through transition, it could be the one that we've talked a lot about, moving and what it's like to make friends and how important those are. But you're also a coach and you're also a seeker and a transition coach specifically. Somebody's in transition. I mean, that's what this podcast is about. And they're struggling with it. What's the one simple tool that they can hit the pause button on this podcast on Spotify or Apple right now and apply? What's one tool that you would recommend for them? And it could be as specific as moving to another country that, some people are moving to another city. A lot of people put up with or go through, but maybe there's something else that's coming to you too. But what's the one thing you could recommend that anybody can do that's going to help them, from your experience, is going to help them the most or a lot as they go through transition?
We can actually apply something that I use with my clients all the time. And I love this tool because it's so simple. But if you sit down and you start writing this down, you've paused. You've hit pause and you've grabbed your piece of paper. But I promise you, this is actually deceptively simple because it is incredibly powerful. But when I say it's simple, it means anybody can use it from where they are today.
Right.
I call it the 3 C's. Mm-hmm. And the 3 C's are, I'll go through them in detail. The 3 C's are clarity, curiosity, and courage. Mm. So clarity can be, what is it that you actually want? And not like, I want this job with this title and this salary, but it's more like, how do you want to feel? What do you want your contribution to be in the world? Who do you want to show up as in this world? When you're done with this transition, what do you want your life to look and feel like? Who do you want to look and feel like, right? What do you want to look and feel like? So that's what I mean with clarity. It's okay, don't just buy the plane ticket and look for the apartment, but really think about these deeper questions about clarity on what your life is going to look like, what your soul is going to feel, and what kind of person you're going to be as you're going through this and as you go out the other side. So that's the clarity I'm talking about. And that's your bullseye. That's so important for you to have top of mind as you go into this.
And what happens when you have a client that says, yeah, but I don't know what I want. I don't know how I want to feel. I don't know what maybe I love the how to feel question because that one's pretty simple to answer. But with the other ones, what's the next question? What's the next layer you would give them behind that?
If you didn't have fear or prior established beliefs about this, what would you allow yourself to really want?
I love that. Yeah.
So strip off these layers that you have about what you think you should be wanting, right? Because sometimes we're about to make that change and we think you should be wanting this thing for these reasons that seem like the right reasons. But sometimes they're just kind of prescribed.
Right.
And if you're really sitting there going, I don't know, I don't even know what I want. Lucky for you, the internet has tons. I mean, it's true. The internet has tons, but like take it as your job. Like if you're not clear yet, do not go to step 2.
Right.
Do not go to step 2 before you're clear on what it is that you want. So that's why I mean the internet is your best friend, but there are lots of other questions other than the ones I just gave here. These are good because they're like, they're a coach's question. They kind of like shoot straight through to the heart, but there are lots of other questions that you can explore that are going to get you to that place, right? So number one, get clear on where you're going, why you want to go there, and who you want to be as you go there. Number 2 is a curiosity. So, okay, so you have an idea of where and why and the deeper reasons for why you want that. Curiosity is, who can help me do this? That's my favorite question, by the way, because we always think that transitions is like, I'm the one who wants to transition.
It's always how can I do this instead of who can do this.
Yeah, who can help me? Who knows more about this than I do? Who can show me the way? What groups or communities or tools already exist out there to help me make this, to help reduce the friction? So that's the curiosity I'm talking about. How do I reduce the friction to get from here to there? Who can help me? What can I do that I haven't done before? Get curious about maybe what shadow, sort of like hidden beliefs you have about the thing. Try to uncover those. Get curious about that. Why do I have this fear over here or this judgment over here? What's that about? Get curious about those types of things. And then the courage, it's funny, I talk about it a lot lately because I'm finding that in my coaching sessions, these are founders, CEOs, VPs, et cetera, who are having to make big decisions about budgets and what do we do? Like, do we keep people, do we keep people on? Do we let them go? Right? What do I tell the board? The board wants this, but I don't think it's the right thing. So the courage, man, the courage is something that we cannot be
courage to what?
Stingy on. Courage to do the right thing.
Boom.
Courage to speak up.
Thank you.
Courage to listen to that part of yourself that says, I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's the right way to go, right? The courage to also say, I've done something like this before. And this is how I went about it. And this is what worked for me. And this is where I got the courage that time 7 years ago when I had to do XYZ that I thought was going to break me and didn't.
Yeah.
Revisit that time. Because it's also having the courage to say, hey, I have what it takes. I've done hard things before.
Right.
I can do hard things. I'm built for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And reconnecting to that person who has made those tough calls in the past, that person who has walked through fire before, that person who has done that thing that you thought was going to kill you but didn't.
Right.
So it's reconnecting to that person who had to be bold and do things that perhaps were gonna piss off some people, but reconnecting to that person who is inside of you, who has that courage. And courage gets overlooked a lot, but you're going to need it here. So try to reconnect to that person in your life, that prior you who has done those tough things before. How did you get through it? And be your own inspiration.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about who inspires you,
Yeah.
reading
Look
the
back
biography.
at yourself and see what, which is great, but see
But they haven't
what
lived
in
your
you
life.
inspires you. Yeah, that's right. And to be true to that, to have the courage to do the right thing, I think is so important. And, I think that quote is like, I don't remember who said this, but, some people are not going to like you anyway. So better to be hated for who you are than loved for who you're not. And
that is guaranteed. There will always be people who are not happy with something you do.
So that comes back to the first clarity. How do you want to feel? Like, because are you going to feel, the first question, are you going to feel better taking the bumps for doing what you know is right, or lying to yourself and to others by appeasing and pleasing? I did a lot of that in my first career. That's beautiful. So the 3 C's is the tool. I really appreciate that. Clarity, curiosity, courage. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Final question for you, Sylvana. Where can people want to connect with you? It's been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your authenticity and your openness. I really, and how I love how you feel things. Like, you don't rush into things. You're like, okay, let me think about that question. Let me embody it. Let me see how it feels in my body before you answer, which is great. It's fascinating. I think people are going to want to connect with you. Where can they connect with you? Where's the best place to find out more about you?
Thank you, Art, for creating a space for me to show up this way. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where you can connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Sylvana Rochet with a T at the end. I'm the only person with my first and last name in the
That's
world,
2 of
I
us.
think.
That's 2 of us.
Oh, really?
I'm
wow.
also. Yeah, I cannot hide in plain sight on the internet because I'm the only one.
Oh yeah, we gotta stay good.
That's right.
And then on Instagram, I'm also on Instagram, Sylvana Rochet, same thing.
Okay.
I'm on there, once in a while, but I'm most active on LinkedIn, so you can catch me either way.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time today and for the beautiful connecting conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being a great host and for creating this beautiful space.
My pleasure. I can't wait to hear what action you are taking. Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.